So only when we speak. Okay, we. Okay, good afternoon for us, good evening for our friends from Palestine. We have now the second lecture with Professor Saad Nimer. I'm here with my colleague Mohammed Nadir, who will coordinate this session, and we have Ragda Shamali, responsible for international cooperation of Birzeit. So I first pass on to Professor Mohammed Nadir. You can speak a little bit about the center, and then we pass to Ragda, who will introduce Professor Saad Nimer, and then we will start the lecture with the PowerPoint with Saad Nimer. Professor Mohammed, please.
Thank you, Professor Giorgio Romano. Good morning or good evening.
We cannot hear you. I cannot hear you.
Não estamos escutando.
Não?
Não. Não está.
Yeah. And now?
And now? Okay.
Okay.
She said okay.
Oh, sorry, my problem. Go on, please.
Hear me now? You hear me, Rabda? It's okay?
Yeah.
No?
Yes,
Okay.
it's okay.
So it's a pleasure to be here with you in this course. Thank you, Professor Giorgio, Professor Saad Nimer, Ragda Shamali. And I just want today to talk a little bit about our Center of Arab and Islamic Studies at UFABC. The Center of Arab and Islamic Studies at UFABC is a research group that today has 4 years of trajectory. It started in 2021 as an extension project, which is a typical modality here in Brazilian universities that aims at internal and external audiences. Then last year, it was registered with the National Council for Scientific and Technological Development, Brazilian Council for Scientific and Technological Development. Throughout this year, the Center for Arab and Islamic Studies has organized several events and colloquia, such as the 10th anniversary of the Arab Spring, in which ambassadors, diplomats, and professors from Brazil, Morocco were present. So we discuss many things about the Arab Spring and so on. And last year we organized also an event on Gaza and the path to peace. We also invited professors from Brazil and the University of Jerusalem, Professor Norit Ilhanan, that you know maybe, who is a great expert on Israeli propaganda in school and textbook in Israel's education system. In addition, we have been working internally within the Center for Arab Studies on classical texts on the Middle East and analyzing the current situation. The Center has more than 20 research members working on various topics that concern the Middle East and Palestine, both at the level of scientific initiation, undergraduate, and postgraduate. Therefore, the Center is a platform for training future Arabists and Islamologists who have, above all, a view, especially a view of Brazil, that is very different from the hegemonic vision that circulate in some studies and media in the West. Brazil, in this aspect, as miscegenated country with 10 million Arab descendants, is the place that is most qualified to create a new emancipatory and reparatory knowledge about the Middle East. So this is our center, and this is the work that we do. Today, this partnership that we have with Birzeit is the thing that we also wanted, and that's why it will be very, very important for us to maintain this relation with Birzeit University. So this is Professor Nimer, Professor Ragda. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Muhammad, for the informative information. And I would like to say hello, good afternoon to all of the people who are listening to us. We are pleased to be with you again here for the second lecture, and hopefully to continue to fill the whole course. I would like to introduce Mr. Saad Nimer. He is a lecturer at the university at the Department of Philosophy. Mr. Saad holds a master's degree in Middle Eastern studies from Exeter University and Britain. He is specializes in the Palestinian Question and participated in many conferences, many workshops in different countries around the world. Before I give Mr. Saad the floor, I would like to highlight that Birzeit University has a PASS program, which is Palestinian Arabic Studies program. This is addressed to international students who would like to join the university and live in Palestine, live the experience of being a student at a Palestinian university. They will come to live in Palestine for one semester, and we offer a couple of courses that they can study and have accreditation of, such as the Arabic language, the formal Arabic and curricular Arabic, the Palestinian Question and the Arab Society, the modern and contemporary Arab thoughts, and most of these courses, of course, Mr. Saad also teaches at the university. So this whole experience is very fruitful to our dear international students, because it's give them experience about living in the whole Palestinian community, if I may say. Last semester, I believe we have around 70 students who applied as international student, although it was like difficult situations and the hard times that we have been through. They continued online, I believe, because it was like the difficulties in movement and coming here. So we offered the online teaching for the PASS program, but every semester we check the availability and the possibility of the students who are interested to come to the university. For this, you can check this opportunity on our website, either external relations or the PASS program on birzeit.edu. And any questions we can also answer and clarify later. I don't want to take much time, but I wanted to highlight this opportunity if anyone is interested in. And now I welcome Mr. Saad. Ahlan wa sahlan. Please.
Please open your mic, Professor.
Right. Thank you, Ragda, and thank you all, Dr. Muhammad and Dr. Giorgio. And I appreciate this opportunity to have this connection between, Middle East and South America. This is something, we are really looking forward to, in order to develop this kind of relationship, whether it's an academic one or it is also on the level of people and students and exchange students, at least so they would know each other and know the culture in both sides. Right, our lecture today is going to be about the history of Palestine till 1935 I don't know why they put me in this position till 35. You know, we are Palestinian. We would like to talk about the Palestinian question all the time. However, right, let me start with saying that the first thing I would like to talk about that we do differentiate in Palestine between two things. One is Jews and Judaism, and between Zionism. Okay, Judaism, we have no problem with that. We've been living with Jews in Palestine, Christian Jews, Muslims, all, you know, for many decades and many centuries, as a matter of fact. Well, after the collapse of Andalusia in 1492, and they kicked out the Muslims from Spain as well as Jews. Some of the Jews, they chose to come to Palestine, or to, if you like, Syria generally, and lived in this area, and we have no problem with that. At the same time, you know, originally Palestine was a Christian country before the Islamic conquering the area. So also we have the Christian who are living in Palestine, and the three religions were just, you know, living together. So we have no problem with Jews as Jews. But what we have a problem with is this colonial regime. Okay, so because of that, to talk about the history of Palestine, we'll start with Zionism, because there is a lot of misunderstanding about what do we mean by Zionism. Some people think that it is something totally related to Jews only, or to I don't know what. But no, it is not. Zionism is a political movement. It's like a party. Even not all of the Jews even believing in Zionism, and some of them are anti-Zionism. So it's not necessarily that every Jew is a Zionist. And at the same time, we know that many other Americans, Europeans are Zionists, though they are not Jews. Okay, for God's sake, we have Arabs who are Zionists. So it doesn't matter. It's a political party. But so because of that, the Israeli, when they try to say, don't criticize Zionism because this is anti-Semitism, no, it is not. This is a political party, and I have the right to criticize it and to criticize its policies, right? And something else, we are also Semitic people, so you can't call us anti-Semitic. Okay, so this issue, we differentiate, and we still have Jews who are living in Palestine, even in the West Bank. I mean, you know, like in Nablus, we have the Samaritans who are Jews, a different sect of Jews, but they are Jews, and they've been living also in Nablus all the time, and they are that much involved with the society, exactly like the Muslims and the Christian in Palestine. And we have space for all these religions in the when we are talking about the tolerant. Now, so if we establish this, so we'll talk about, you know, Zionism a little bit, and then we'll go through what happened in Palestine since, you know, the beginning of the Zionist movement. Can we have the presentation on, please? The PowerPoint.
Yeah, it's coming. Wait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Next. So we are talking about, next slide, yes, Theodor Herzl. Theodor Herzl was a journalist in Vienna, and he was atheist. He was a Jew, but he was atheist. He didn't care about any religion. So he used to write in his articles to advise Jews to deny, because of the anti-Semitism which was spreading in Europe, to advise them not to, you know, to declare that they are Jews, to avoid anti-Semitism. And if it became very well known, convert. So he was even calling Jews to convert to Christianity, and, you know, to avoid to be under this kind of anti-Semitism. However, that continued with him for a while, till one incident happened in France, which is known as Dreyfus question, or Dreyfus issue. Dreyfus was an officer in the French army, and he was a Jew, and there was a Trojan in the army. And without even questioning, they arrested him and they trialed him accusing him that he was the one who's spying or, making the Trojan. But later on, during the court, they discovered that he was innocent and it was not him who had the Trojan. And the question was, why then you arrested him? It was because he was a Jew. So because this was a kind of atrocities against Jews. So Theodor Herzl, after this case, apparently he started to change his mind about Jews have to assimilate in these societies, denying their religion or converting to have a new idea. Next slide, please. So we can see so he rejected his earlier ideas regarding Jews' emancipation and assimilation, and to believe that Jews must remove themselves from Europe and create their own state. That was his idea. Next. So he, because of that, he wrote a book. Well, it's not a book, it's a booklet to put all his ideas in this issue. And he called it the Judenstaat in German language, which means the Jewish state. And his ideas about a Jewish state and creating a Jewish state. Can we have the next slide, please? The Jewish state. Yeah, that was the booklet that he produced, the Jewish state, where he was calling to bring all Jews out. Now, if you have a group of people who were discriminated against in any country, the right thing is to struggle to end this kind of discrimination. Okay, it is not the right thing to remove them from the societies because of that. To the contrary, I believe, and everyone believes, because the Jewish question became a very important question in all of Europe, and lots of thinkers, writers, intellectuals wrote about the Jewish question, and all of them were agreeing that this is something wrong, and the whole society, including the Jews, should struggle to end the discrimination in Europe against Jews, which is the normal thing, since we are talking about liberty and freedom and equality and all these kind of things. But to remove them, I think this was an extreme. Maybe there was other ideas behind it. It's not just to remove Jews in order to save them from this discrimination. However, this idea, if we are going to apply it, during the 40s, 50s, there was discrimination against blacks in America. Okay? And what is the right thing? To remove all the blacks from America and create a state for them? This is the idea. So with the Zionists, they thought, in the other way around, is to take Jews out and to create a state for them. And I think there were other kind of, let me say, ideas or objectives behind this kind of Jewish state. However, they suffered. The Zionists, they suffered because most of the Jews in Europe, they refused the idea. Why should I remove myself from my country, which I've been living here for hundreds of years, and sell everything and leave my job and to go to somewhere I don't know where yet? Why? Because of the anti-Semitism. So it was a little bit, hard for him. So Herzl, thinking in this way, Zionism. Next slide, please, and you'll see how he was dealing with it. Solving there was, I think, another one before it, one slide before. Yes, this is one. And this is from his memories, his book. It is essential that the suffering of Jews become worse. Can you imagine that? He's a leader who wants to solve the problem of the Jews. He wants the problem to become even worse, and the suffering of the Jews. Why? Because he wants them to immigrate, to agree to his idea. This will assist in realization of our plan. I have an excellent idea. I shall induce anti-Semitism to liquidate Jewish wealth. The anti-Semitism will assist us thereby in that they will strengthen the persecution and oppression of Jews, the anti-Semitism shall be our best friend. This is from his own book. Can you imagine? He's with the suffering of his people, and he wants to increase the suffering to, agree with his idea to remove all Jews and to create this Jewish state that he was talking about. Next, please. The one before. Before. Yeah. So, solving the Jewish problem, as we just explained, there are a few facts about that. Anti-Semitism is a European problem created and practiced in Europe. We have nothing to do with it in the Middle East. Okay, so it is a European problem and it should have been solved in Europe, which is the second fact. Solving the anti-Semitism problem is by fighting to change the laws in Europe and stand against all kinds of racism. And the third fact, that Zionism demanding a Jewish state is a racist statement by definition. When you are saying, I want a state for only Jews, this is also a racist statement. So that's why we connect always Zionism as a movement with racism, because it's, they want to have a state only for Jews. So what about the non-Jews? Plus, if you want to create a state for the Jews, are you going to go to the supermarket to buy a state? Are states like, they open like that and you can pick and choose? This is also another problem, which with the help of Britain, the first Zionist Congress, it happened in Switzerland, in Basel, that was in 1897. Accordingly, in this conference, they have discussed how to make this state, but the problem was where and how to choose which country. There were many suggestions. Next, please. Such as Argentina, because already there was an immigration to Argentina from some of the Jewish communities in Europe. Another suggestion, and that suggestion came from the United Kingdom, from Britain. They suggested that because it was under Uganda, it was under the control of the British, and they offered them Uganda. It's a vast country with lots of resources, good water, and you have lots of things. So, and they were thinking about it. And the last delegation of the Zionist movement went to Uganda to examine the situation. It was 1905. So the idea was still in their mind. However, in the conference, they decided to go to Palestine. Though most of them were atheists, but they think of Palestine in order to convince many Jews as they could to join the project. So instead of saying, let's find a country to go to and establishing a Jewish state, they will say, let's return back to where our ancestors were 3,000 years ago. And they start faking lots of things about that. So basically, there is another problem with the Zionist movement, that Judaism is a religion like any other religions, but they were trying to create a nationality or a nation out of the religion. Because by the end of the day, if we are talking today, what's the connection in national way between Jews who are living in Ethiopia, they call them the Flasha, and Jews who are living in France? What's the connection? Not the language, neither history, nor even the land, which are the basic or factors for nationality. So there is no connection. It's a religion, like my relationship as a Muslim with the Muslim in Philippines. Yeah, no language. We have the same religion, yes, or any Christian with the Christian who are living here in Ramallah, in my building. The connection is, religion, but not nation, not nationality. So to create a nation out of religion, this is also a question mark about, the intention of the Zionism. Next, please. Right. That was in the same ideas of the British. The British at that time were like, America today. They were the empire that the sun would never set. It was a huge colonial power. They were in Africa, they were in India, they were even in America and everywhere. So they saw in the Zionist project a good help for them. So they were helping the Zionist movement. In 1917, on the 2nd of November, we have Mr. Arthur Balfour. He was the foreign secretary for the government in Britain, and he issued the well-known Balfour Declaration. And for your information, this is Balfour Declaration, but we will see it now in details. This is the 4th draft. There were many drafts before it. All of it were written by the Zionist movement in Britain and sent to him. Jews were asking for a state in Palestine, and he said, well, this is too much for us now. We can't do it as a state, so let's do it, step by step. So he declared then the 4th, after all the amendments here and there, the 4th copy of Balfour Declaration, which came as, next please. And this is the what it was written in there. I have much pleasure to convey to you on behalf of His Majesty government. That was addressed to Lord Rothschild, a very rich family, Jewish family in Britain. The following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspiration, which has been submitted to and approved by the cabinet. And here is the declaration. His Majesty government view with favor to establishing or the establishment in Palestine a nation home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of the object. It is being clearly understood that nothing shall be done with which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of the existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I haven't seen in my whole life such a racist declaration. They called us, we are the indigenous people living in Palestine, to explain who we are, non-Jewish communities. Can you imagine that? How racist is that? We are now became, like introduced as the non-Jewish community, as if Jewish community are, and the Jewish, they declare them as people. The problem is that this declaration, it came out even before the British occupied Palestine. We were still officially under the Ottoman regime at that time, 1917, because the British entered Palestine towards the beginning by, December and January 1918, they entered Palestine and occupied. So they have no right to give someone the land of other people, just like that, denying the rights of the Palestinians. Only civil and religious rights. We are allowed to go to pray. We are allowed to get married, or to go to education. But what about our political rights? No. This is the colonial mentality, and the colonial mentality, which is today we can see it. Why even till today the British and some European countries, Western countries, are supporting Israel in this genocidal war against Gaza, because this is the colonial mentality which was, dominant at that time. However, the British government, they issued Balfour Declaration. The reasons why, it's not because of the Jews or anything else, but they have their own interest. The first one is to create a friendly colonial country at the backyard of Egypt to protect Suez Canal. That was the major aim for the British, because we are the gateway between Asia and Africa, Palestine. our borders is separating Asia from Africa. And we are really the backyard of the Suez Canal. It's Sinai Desert and then Suez Canal. So they preferred to have a country in that region, there in the backyard of the Suez Canal, which is a friendly country, a colonial country, and European somehow in the borders of Egypt. So to protect their influence over, Suez Canal, especially Suez Canal, because Suez Canal was very, very important for the British. It is the shortest way to reach the jewel of the crown, as they call it, India. Otherwise, they have to go all the way around Africa to get to India. So no, it is now easier for them to do it through Suez Canal, and that's why they dug Suez Canal in the first place. So they want to protect Suez Canal to keep their trade moving around. The second one is to create a friendly colonial country at the heart of the Arab world to prevent establishing a united Arab state. Arabs as one nation under the Islamic period, which ended by the Ottomans. When the Ottomans finished, it was all the time under Islamic, state or Islamic influence or empires. Whether it's from the Umayyads to the Abbasids to the Mamluks to the all the dynasties, regardless. And we never ever had borders. We are one country. We are one, if you like, or one region. We are one people. With the same language, with the same everything, with the same history. The colonial powers, generally, they started this kind of, cutting the Arab world into countries. We have regions. We know that Iraq is Iraq. We know that. Syria is Syria, or Bilad Sham, okay? Egypt is Egypt. But these were like a kind of a region name. But it is not, as a different country. It was never, during all the period, till the Ottoman Empire, as, independent entity or states. However, the colonial power, they started cutting that, especially in 1916 with the agreement between the French and the British in what was known at that time as Sykes-Picot. That the British and the French, they sat together and have this agreement with the map. This area for you, this area for me, this is under my control, this is under your control, and so on. So they cut it, the whole Arab world, into these kind of influences between the French and the British. Okay, already the Italian were in Libya, and the French were in Algeria. The British were also in Egypt. Now the rest, the eastern part of the Arab world, they want to cut it off between Syria and Iraq, Arabian Peninsula, and Palestine with a special situation. All that either under control or either under influence of the British or the French. But Palestine, it was a special situation. Palestine should be under mandate. Okay, and the last one is the considering the Zionist movement as of the colonial movement led by the British. They consider the Zionism as part of their colonial activities. They saw them as colonialist. And as a result of fact, you can refer to Edward Said's book on the Palestinian Question when he's talking about how European and the West generally were viewing Zionists. And they were talking about them as part of this colonial power and colonial activities in the region. Next, please. So after Balfour Declaration, that was the green light for the Zionist movement to start their project. Now, Britain occupied Palestine in 1918, so you can say that the Zionist movement, they started their activities in real in Palestine by 1918 with the green light of the British. At that time, the first census that the British made in Palestine after the occupation in 1918, there was 700,000 Palestinians living in Palestine at that time, of all religions. 700,000. 700,000. the distribution was like this: 8% of the population were Jews, 11% were Christian, and 81% were Muslims in Palestine at that time. But we are talking about 700,000. The one that the British called them non-Jewish community. Okay, next, please. Right, and when they imposed what was known as the mandate on Palestine, and the mandate politically, it means that these people and this country are not ready for independence. So we will appoint a big brother to take care of them, to prepare them for independence. So they chose Britain to be the one who is big brother for us, to prepare us to be ready for independence. And they sent us Mr. Herbert Samuel, who was the first high commissioner in Palestine, responsible for the British mandate on Palestine. That was in 1920. And if we look at the mandate articles, okay, you will find that it was put there to facilitate the establishment of the national home for Jews in Palestine, or if you look clearly, closely, you will find it was there to facilitate the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine. All the articles, the help of the British to the Jewish communities. First of all, they allowed them to immigrate to Palestine. They allowed them to have industry. They pushed them, for God's sake. I'll give you just one example. If a Palestinian and a Jew working in a camp for the British, let's say, or in the railway or in the port, and they are both in an identical job, the Jewish person will take more in salary than the Palestinian. And when you ask why, they will tell you, but the standard of living for the Jews is higher. How come? We are living in the same country. How come their standard of living is different from us? So they were also discriminating even in these kind of things. Can you imagine that? So Herbert Samuel was the first high commissioner in Palestine in 1920, when they started, for the Zionist movement, that, as I said, was the go on with their project, and they started their project. Now, their objectives in Palestine became very clear. Next, please. So if we are going to look at the objectives for the Zionist movement, first thing was to change the demography of Palestine by encouraging Jewish immigration. And that was a big problem, to bring as much Jews as they would, especially that lots of Jews who are against even Zionism. However, over 30 years, from 1918 till 1948, when Israel was established, in 30 years, they managed to bring in around 700,000 immigrants to Palestine. The Palestinian with a natural birth rate, in 1948, we became 1.4 million. So Palestinian 1.4 million, Jews were 700,000. So we're talking about Jews were making something like 33% of the total population. This is the first one, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Obtaining as much as they could of land, to buy land, acquisition of land in many ways. And the third one is to building an economy based on industrialization. And this is something unique in the Middle East, not in Palestine, because after the Ottoman period, which was a feudal system, our societies, Arab societies, were agrarian society, were depending on agriculture. And now this state, or the Zionist movement, wanted to build an economy which is based on industrialization. It means it will have the advantage of that, or the European know-how in the region, and it will be the only country in the region who are, industrialized and advanced in this issue. And the last one is to build the infrastructure for the state. They have a very short time, 30 years. I don't think it's enough, to build from the scratch unless you already prepared. with lots of money. For that reason, they created many organizations belong to the Zionist movement, such as the Jewish Fund, which was, going all around, try to, liquidate money for the Zionist movement. And they created another organization, they call it CARI-UFABC, which means that it's taking care of buying land and grabbing land in as much as they could. However, we will look at these objectives, at least, briefly now, because we don't have enough time. Yes, go ahead, please, with the next, to look at the demography. And as you can see from the chart here, that Palestinian in 1918, Palestinian and Jews were living as Palestinians, Arab Palestinians, but their religion is Jewish, like, the Christian Arab Palestinians, but their religion is Christianity. We're around 700,000. The number of Jews alone were only 56,000 in Palestine. And that what represent 8% of the population. And you can see over the years, the Palestinian with the red columns, the development is the development of natural birth, because we have no immigration. The Jewish increasing in the population, it was because of the increasing, the immigration. Like, look, between 1931 and 1944, you will find, which is the period of the war, and especially after the Nazis became in Europe, we are talking about a huge jump from 174,000 to more than 500,000. And this jump is because of, the situation in Europe at that time. And then during the war, there was a very little activities. But again, after the war, till the establishing of Israel, around 200,000 also immigrants, because of the results of what happened in Europe. And the promise that you are coming to the land of honey and milk, as the Zionist statement was. And another statement which was very, very famous, land with no people for a people with no land, claiming that Palestine was empty. So this was what happened during that period, in order to bring as much Jews to Palestine. But however, 33% of the total population, that was a little bit of a change to the demography of Palestine, but not a decisive change. We are still the majority in Palestine in 1948, when Israel was established. Next, please. Now, regarding the land acquisition, the total area of Palestine is around 6 million acres, 6,500,000 almost acres. And look how modest was the acquisition of land by the Jewish community and the Zionist movement. Till 1948, when Israel was established, they bought, the best number I could find by the Israeli resources is 6.5%. That's what they bought till 1948. The Palestinian figures that also I looked at, it's around 5.5%. So, however, doesn't matter. Around 6% is, even if I'm taking the Israeli numbers, okay, 6.5% of all the Palestinian land. That's what they, because nobody was selling to them. And most of this land, they got it, in so many different ways, but not by the Palestinians, who never would sell their land to the Zionist movement. Next, please. So we can see that the 6.5% that they got it 78%, it was bought from absentee landlords, who during the Ottoman Empire, mid of 19th century, when they allow people to buy the land, and private land started, because before that, all the land was belonged to the state or to the Sultan. But mid of the 19th century, and exactly that was in 1858 till 1862, they changed the land code and allowed people to buy land. Now, some of the families, and especially they were in Beirut in Lebanon, they managed to either bribe the registrar or something like that, and they register lots of lands in their own names. We never know them even they don't know where is that land. They just register it. And the Zionist movement approached them, and they paid them, like double the price or the market price for the land, and they sell it. So 78% of the 6% came from those landlords. The British government and the mandate, they allocated 13% of the 6% by the British from the, what they call it, state land in Palestine. The Palestinian, some of the families, they sell land. That was true, but it was 9% of the 6%. So the claim that Palestinians sell their land is absolutely not there. 9% of the 6%. Can you imagine? That's very, very small portion. Because nowadays, especially after the war in Gaza, we hear lots of even Arab Gulf states, they are claiming that you sell your land and now you are claiming you want for your freedom. No, we didn't sell our land. And this is a kind of a fake, statement that we sell our land. No, we didn't. So they got only 6%. The rest of it, after 1948, they confiscated, as easy as that. Right, next, please. Right, in the economy and, as I said, industry, they started industry. And it was really something. Do you know the first factory they created? The first factory, Zionist movement created in Palestine, was a factory called Shemen, which means in Hebrew language, oil. That to compete with, we have many factories to produce the olive oil natural soup, which used to be even exported through Jaffa port to Marseille in France, and from Marseille it will be distributed in Europe. A natural olive oil soup for bath and for everything. So the first factory the Zionist movement created, it was Shemen, which was specialized in buying the olive oil from the Palestinians and producing this soap to compete with the Palestinian local industry. So that was, part of it. Lots of projects which the Palestinian would apply for by bids by the British, and it will be given to the Jewish sector, not to the Palestinians, such as the Rothenberg project, which was to electrify Palestine. That was between 1928 to 2030. And the British wanted to spread the electricity all over Palestine, and the project will be near Tiberias Lake. 7 Palestinian companies joined the bid. 1 Jewish company joined. And guess what? The Jewish company got it. The British were totally behind them in everything. Lots of other, issues to make some restriction over the Palestinian economy and to help the Jewish economy. For instance, when the Histadrut was established, which is one of the, well, we'll talk about it anyway in a minute when we talk about the institutions. Next, please. Yeah. So the state building institutions started as early as, after 1918 immediately. So this is Hadassah Hospital, which was in different areas. So they start building these institutions. Next, please. That was 1925. And this is the Hebrew University. Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And it was built and ready 1921. If they started 1918, for God's sake, can we do a university in 3 years to build and prepare all the disciplines and the professors and all the materials in 3 years? Unless it was even prepared before that. In 3 years, the university was working. Next. Yeah, and this is the Histadrut, which is the General Federation of Labor, Jewish labor. It's supposed to protect the, rights of the Jewish labor, but the first decision, it was established in 1920. In 1921, they took the decision to boycott anything Palestinian. And the decision was, as they put it, Hebrew work. So Palestinians should not be hired also by any Jewish institution or Jewish land. We talked about 78% of the 6% was, land grabbed from these absentee families, landlords. But there was in that land, because it's vast land, there was, villages and Palestinian working in there. With the Hebrew work, they called the British and they told them, this is our land and we don't want to see Palestinians in there. Okay, so the British, they brought their troops and they kicked out all the Palestinians from this land. That happened in 1921. So if we're talking about the exodus of the Palestinians, it started way before 1948. 22 Palestinian villages were destroyed at that time. Okay, the people who were kicked out from these villages, around 85,000 Palestinians who lost their jobs and lost their, with their families. We are talking about around 12,000 family. And those now, they have no job, no land, and nowhere even to live. So they started creating, shanty towns and tin towns near to the big cities in Palestine. That created also another crisis because of this, unemployment. They are in poverty. The Palestinian agriculture can't, absorb them. So they became unskilled workers trying to find jobs here and there in near Haifa port or in the railway or by the British camps. So that created a big, crisis, economic crisis. Not only that, according to the British reports, it says that between the year 1921 till 1927, the overall production in Palestine dropped because you take the people out of the land and you have no power to replace them. There wasn't enough Jewish immigrants to replace the Palestinian in the land. So the land was for almost 6 years, 7 years without cultivation. So the overall production of Palestine dropped in these years because they kicked out the Palestinian. They boycotted everything Palestinian. Hence, the first uprising in Palestine happened in 1921. That was the first uprising because, people were under that stress and they want to, express their anger of what's going on. So that what happened with the Histadrut or the General Federation of Labors. Right, next, please. Right, here is the numbers again. The Histadrut and the 85,000 Palestinian peasants forced to leave their land, and 22 Palestinian villages were destroyed totally and leveled with the ground. Next, please. Right. Another aspect of building state institutions was the military. Zionist movement, there is no military. After what happened in 1921 and the clashes between the Palestinian people and the Jewish immigrants, the Zionist movement went to the British and they told them, well, we need to appoint guards to protect or to defend our settlements. And the British approve it. Defend in English. In Hebrew, it's called Haganah. Haganah is to defend. Okay, maybe the term is a little bit, familiar because it's still here till today now. So the British allow them to have camps to train some guards. And they tell them, okay, if we have the camps and we have the guards, we need weapon to train these guards. So they allow them to have weapon. But they didn't define what kind of weapon and how much of weapon. And that was like, a license for the Zionist movement to start importing weapons and to go ahead with, creating a huge army, as a matter of fact, not guards. We are talking about Haganah. Okay. I will refer to Ze'ev Jabotinsky. Ze'ev Jabotinsky, one of the leaders of the Zionist movement, and he wrote an article around that time, 1921-22. It's called The Iron Wall. And he claimed in that book or that article that there isn't any people around the world will accept another people to come and to grab their land and to establish their entity on their land. Sooner or later, the indigenous people are going to revolt against these coming people. And in our case, we have to be prepared. The Palestinians will definitely revolt against us. So we need to be prepared and ready. How? By forming this kind of military institution, or if you like, militias. So it was in 1948, when Israel was established in the war, as they call it, the War of Independence, the Haganah personnel was 60,000 soldiers, trained, and some of them participated in the Second World War under the British command as the Jewish League in the war. So trained, experienced, and some of the British officers trained them, and also they have lots of weapons, including tanks and even airplanes. And that was all under the eyes of the British mandate, and they allow it, because the British creating the whole thing. Next, please. You can see the training of this, guards to defend the settlements, as they claim. Next, please. Right. Now we come almost to finalize. This is the map of Palestine, which they wrote on it Israel. But now, if the Zionist movement wanted to create a state for Jews, and the majority will be Jews, and they know that demographically they didn't make a big change. So what are we going to do with the Palestinians who are living in Palestine? And there are 66% of the population in Palestine. Jews were 33% of the population. What should we do? The British told them, okay, don't worry about it. They created in 1922 what they call it Transjordan. There wasn't a country called Jordan. There was a river called Jordan. They created a country and they call it Transjordan. And for God's sake, look at the borders of this Jordan. Clearly, a British officer was sitting there with the map and a ruler and a pencil, and straight lines, all of it straight lines. This is, creating a state. Why? Because if the Jews are going to establish their own state, and it is a Jewish state, pure Jewish state, they need somewhere to push the Palestinian to. And where is that? To Jordan. No wonder that till today, around 70% of the total population of Jordan are Palestinians. Not only because of the 1948 war, and after and even before. So they created Transjordan and to push the Palestinian out in the biggest ethnic cleansing event that happened in the region. So that's why they created Jordan, in order to push us there, in there. So the Zionist movement, not only it's a racist, it's a colonialist, and it is based on violence, hatred, and racism, if we want to describe Zionism. And that's why I said from the very beginning, we don't have a problem with the Jews, we have a problem with Zionism. And Israel established by this Zionist entity the same mentality, and you can see it quite clearly in the last year, how this state think. Okay, Gaza, regardless of what's going on in Gaza. What about the West Bank? Why they are targeting the West Bank in the same way? Okay, we have no, and the control for the Palestinian Authority, not for Hamas, as they claim. Hamas is a terrorist organization and it's controlling Gaza, so we want to get rid of them to justify this genocide that they are going, doing in there. Okay, what about Lebanon now? In the last few days, they started, a huge campaign now in Lebanon, and also genocide is going there. Why you are targeting hospitals? Why you are targeting doctors? Why you are targeting children? Why you are targeting, how your ethics would allow you to do that, to kill children and to target children? Because when we are talking about today, the official number of the hospitals in Gaza, 42,000 Palestinians were killed. 60% of those children and women, mostly children, because in Palestine as a whole, 52% of our population under 18 years old. So whatever you are killing, half of them will be Palestinian children. They are targeting children. How about when they evacuated the hospital and they left the children in the incubators, newly born in the incubators, and they were watching them dying because there was no oxygen. They were watching them dying. What kind of mentality for this soldier or this person or whatever he is would allow something like this to happen? He's standing there to guard this hospital, which they evacuated, and they see the children in the incubators dying because they cut the oxygen because there was no electricity, and they are watching them dying, and they didn't care. They don't care. What kind of mentality? This is the basics for Zionism, which is, as I said, based on hatred, discrimination, and violence. Next. I should have said it. Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Saad Nimer, for your lecture. It was amazing and very interesting of the history of the Zionism and the occupation and everything. There are some questions that the students made, so I will say it to you and you respond, okay?
Yeah, sure.
The first question by Hadi Ali, why and when Judaism come to be considered an ethnicity? Don't Ashkenaz from Khazaria?
Again, to consider Jewish to consider
an ethnicity. Ethnicity. Don't
yes.
Ashkenazi from Khazaria? Don't Ashkenazi from Khazaria?
Right. Yeah. This is a big question. So will bring us back to how do we define a nation? A nation, usually, especially nation state, when we have a common language for everyone, when we have a common history, joint history, common history, and when we have a piece of land where this language is practiced and where this history happened. That's usually what most of the scientists agreed, or social scientists agreed, is for the definition of a national home or national state. Now, let's go to the Jews. Jews, like, Muslims or Christians, it's a global religion. It's not my problem that Judaism, they are not, asking people to join. They are closed a little bit. And that's why there are around 17 million around the world today. And that helped a lot in having this idea that they are one nation. Again, it's not ethnicity, it's nation, because they can't say ethnicity if you have black Jews, okay? You have the Flasha Jews who are in Ethiopia, Ethiopian Jews. They have their own language, they have their own history in Ethiopia, they've been living there all their lives, and they have this piece of land where everything was happening. What connection between them and Jews in Germany? okay, a family in Germany, Jews, who have their language, who have their history in Germany, and they have their piece of land that they are living there. Now, I know that back in the history, but this is the history of the religion 3,000 years ago, like the history of Islam, 1,400 years ago. Is it now true to say that all Muslims are one nation? Is that work? And I will demand an Islamic state for everywhere, including those who are living in China and a little bit who are living in America, and also they are going to be in this is how. We are not an ethnicity. Muslims is not an ethnicity. It's a religion, which is something ideological in your thought. You can change it sometimes if you want. You can convert, okay? But your nationality, you can't change. It's born with you. So the common thing is the language. Yeah, there was a language, a Hebrew language, an old one. But is it a live language or it's a dead language? We have the hieroglyphic for the pharaohs. We know how to read it today and how to, to read it. Would that make it, a live language and working? Or the Aramaic, where the Aramaic language, which is the basis for all Semitic languages, such as Arabic and Hebrew even, okay? Now, some rabbis do read Hebrew, but it is not spoken with everyone. What happened with the Zionism, to establish a state and a nation, they worked on these three issues: the history, the language, and the land. In the language, there have been this guy, he called himself Ahad Ha'am. In Hebrew means one people. And he created a new language, which is taken from Old Hebrew plus Yiddish, which was in Germany, a mixture between Old Hebrew and German. It was spoken by the elite of the Jewish families only. And he took also from the Arabic and returned back to the Aramaic origin of the Semitic languages. And he mixed them all together and produced this new language, which is now spoken in Israel. If you compare it with the Old Hebrew, it has nothing to do with it. So now they started to have a language. And believe you me, the first thing the immigrants who are coming to Israel, to live in Israel as an immigrants, the first thing they do usually is to learn this language. But when they go back home, okay, to their family, even in Israel, do you think they will speak Hebrew? They speak the same language they came from. If they are French, coming from France, they will speak French in their home. If they're coming from America, they speak English. If they're coming from, I don't know where, they will speak that language. This is language only for the street, for to deal with each other. It's not a real language. And history, it's based on biblical story. And for the biblical story, which was written 700 years after the death of Moses. So it was exaggerated, too much exaggerated. And we have lots of things about that, and lots of writers wrote about that. However, I will advise you to look in that subject, particularly to Shlomo Sand. He's a historian, French Jewish Israeli historian, Shlomo Sand. 2008, his first book was The Invention of the People of Israel. And he claimed that he's an Israeli Jew. And he said that there isn't something called Jewish people. And 2012, another book, it was titled of the Invention of Land of Israel. And he claimed again that there isn't something called Land of Israel. I would go with Ilyas Shufani, who wrote The History of Palestine. And he said, we don't deny that Jews were in Palestine, but there were small groups like, all other immigrant groups who came to Palestine. And if they built the temple, that temple will be from the same material which was at that time people are building from. So to show that the temple is in Jerusalem and in that, and they give it all this description, this is, exaggeration. So they are not an ethnicity, nothing connected them together. They are not a nation. definitely. It's a religion. Exactly as I told you in the example, what relate me with the Muslim in Philippines. We have the same. Or the Christian who are living in my building, because in my building we have like 5 or 6 families, Christian families. Okay, they are our neighbors and our, with the British Christian. No, my connection with those are more, than their connection with a Christian, because we have the same language, we have the same problems, we have the same. See, even our faces looks the same, for God's sake. And because of that, please, don't get the mistake, which is very often around the world, that Jesus Christ is blonde and blue eyes. No. He's a Middle Eastern. Jesus Christ is a Palestinian. So he's originally from Nazareth, a Palestinian city, came to be born in Bethlehem, a Palestinian city, and buried in Jerusalem, old city, a Palestinian city. So he's a Palestinian, so he's not blonde and blue-eyed. He's Mediterranean. Okay, so this is how it is.
Okay, Professor. Thank you. There is another question, Professor Saad. Would you be able to explain to us what is the Palestinian or Levantine in broader sense definition of colonialism?
Well, I think that our definition of colonialism is not different from the well-known definition of colonialism all around the world. We know that capitalism, when it started to solve their economical problem, they have to go for colonialism to solve these problems, to open new markets, one, to find raw materials for free, and to have cheap workers. And if you look exactly at the best example, we can talk about the example of India, and go for Rosa Luxemburg and her articles about India. It's amazing, to know exactly how colonialism works and why they are controlling other people. Now, the problem with colonialism, not only that, but that they do colonialism because they think that they are superior to other countries and to other people, right? And especially when we are talking about white colonialism, okay? And this is the problem, the major problem, if you like, with colonialism. Now, I will tell you something. I don't want to go to the statements of the Israeli leaders and what do they say. The first thing the Israeli do against the Palestinians, dehumanizing the Palestinians, because they don't accept that we and them in the same level as humans. They do dehumanize. And maybe I will quote only Gideon Levy. He's a writer and a columnist in Haaretz newspaper in Israel, who still write about that. And he said that this is one basic thing for the Israelis, that they don't believe that Palestinians are equal to Jews or to Israelis. They are, like less race. Remind you with how the anthropology science started, to measure the heads of the blacks and say, their heads is longer, so they are, less race than the white European, the advanced people. So this is the problem with colonialism. Gideon Levy saying that he came to a roadblock where it was closed for the Palestinians near Jenin town during the second Intifada, and he said that there was an ambulance in front of him waiting also on the roadblock, and no one was there at all because Jenin was closed during the Intifada. So he said, I don't want to go and start fighting with the soldiers, but after 40 minutes of waiting, I went to the driver of the ambulance and asked him what's going on, why we are waiting. And the ambulance driver, he said, this is how they usually do it. They make us wait for 1 hour, then one soldier will come and check. And if he might pass us or maybe return us back. So he said, I went to the tent of the soldiers. And there was an argument between, he's an Israeli as well, a Jew. And there was an argument between him and the soldiers. So he ended up saying, okay, what if your father was the one in the ambulance? And he said, here they lost it, and they even hold weapon against me. And it became really, really very tense. It's not just a problem. Why? How dare you to compare my father with a Palestinian? This is the mentality of colonialism. So when they kill a Palestinian child, they don't think that they are killing a child. They are killing, insect. Doesn't matter. This is the dehumanizing of the Palestinians to feel more comfortable with what they are doing. Okay. During the second Intifada, we are having more than 200 cases of women giving birth on the barrier, on the roadblock. Because he said, no, you are not allowed to go. But she's in an ambulance and she's, giving birth. And she gave birth on the barrier. What kind of mentality is this? They don't care because we are not humans. They don't look at us as human. The defense minister, Mr. Gallant, today, okay, at the beginning of the 7th of October, he said, we are dealing with not a human, with animals. So that's how they are seeing us. And this is what all about, colonialism. So it's not only the economic part to have, market and materials and cheap labor, but also the mentality that we are the superior, they are the inferior, so we can do whatever we want and no one should ask us. And this is our understanding because we live it every day.
Okay, thank you, Professor Saad. There is another question, Professor. What is the source of the demographic graphic you showed in the beginning of the presentation? What is the source, that graphic that you showed in your lecture?
Yeah. Well, on the Palestinian question, wherever you look, you will find some resources. It's a lot of books and a lot of material wrote about Palestine, and that's why what we talked about today. At least that will take me something like 3 or 4 classes usually in the university, because we go into the details, because I'm just giving a very quick scan for the period of time, but we started from the Ottoman Empire. So we gather lots of resources, but you can find those, and these are usually from the British resources, from the British Mandate resources. And if you look at the British Mandate, you'll find lots of things, and especially in London Museum Library and the archives that they released, there is a huge number of resources by the British. For God's sake, they used to even each one working for them and how much he was earning every day. It was his name and his earning every day. He worked in the port. So there's lots of resources, especially by the British.
Okay, thank you. This is another question, Professor. During the exodus of 1920, that the British helped the Zionists, did the Arab countries around do something about it?
Which country? Other countries?
Other countries, Arab countries.
Okay.
Did something about it?
Now, before I speak about Arab countries, did anyone around the world did anything to prevent America from helping Israel in doing genocide in front of our own eyes in Gaza? America is supporting Israel and sending them the weapons, sending them the money, and also giving them a diplomatic help, and especially in the United Nations, to prevent any resolution against Israel. What did the other countries do? We have a dominant country, which is America. At that time, it was Britain. Now, for the Arab countries, there wasn't Arab countries yet. It was all of them under the British control. There wasn't Arab countries started to, get after the post, war, Second World War, the term post-colonial, as they call it, which I don't agree with post-colonial, because we are still under colonial till today. So Arab countries were still under the British and the French, if you like, colonialism and occupation, and they couldn't even do anything. And some of the Arab leaders, which they were at that time, such as Faisal and Abdullah, Iraq, and the guy who they put him in Jordan, they were totally behind the British. And Faisal, even he said that we agree with the Balfour Declaration and we want to see more and more Jews coming to Palestine. So no, they didn't do anything. To the contrary, they were helping.
Okay, Professor. There is another question, mine, but I will let it at the final. Another question by Bruno Alexander Reis Costa. If you could talk, Professor, a little bit about Palestinian nationalism and its relation to Pan-Arabism, and the difference between Wataniya and Qawmiya, and its similarities and differences to the hegemonic understanding of nationalism.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we have three levels, Wataniya, Qawmiya, and Ummah, which is patriotism, Wataniya, and Qawmiya is nationalism. And I don't have a term for Ummah because, you know, these are all, if you like, if you translate them, they're all nationalism. And Ummah, usually we use it for Islamic Ummah. We say Islamic Ummah, which is, you know, connecting us on that level ideologically. It's a thought thing. Nationalism, it's a relationship with people who are in common in language and in history and in land. Now, patriotism, Wataniya, it's your belonging to a certain place, which is a material kind of relationship, connection, sorry. It's like, you know, Palestine or Palestine, I'm a Palestinian, so this is my patriotism, okay? But I'm an Arab. I'm an Arab. My nationality is an Arab. But because of the, again, colonialism who cut us into countries, okay, we became 22 Arab countries. Now, Pan-Arabism and Arab ideology of Arab nationalism, which especially during the 60s, 70s by Abdel Nasser, who wanted to unite. This is something that the West don't want to see. Can you imagine, just imagine, for the sake of the argument, that Arab countries are all together one country in the middle of the world, connecting Africa, Asia, and Europe together, and huge, with big resources, 400 million, we are number 3, population-wise, number 4, wealth-wise, and number 5, maybe army-wise. No, they don't want to see that. And it's Islamic? No. So they were working against that. Now, the thing is, the problem that with all our regimes, it is most of it, it's dictatorship and totalitarian regimes. This is our problem with our regimes politically. I'll give you an example. We have a state called Bahrain. I don't know if you have heard of it. It's in the Gulf state, and it is this is small. The population is less than 1 million. Okay, and they declared themselves as a kingdom. So the guy who's leading Bahrain is a king. Now, if we have Arab unity and one Arab state, what would he do in life? So it's much better for him to fight, to stay as a king, and he don't want Arab unity. And the same with most of the Arab leaders. They don't want to see Arab unity because they will lose their position. So it's in their best interest to stay as a leader, to stay as a king or as an emir in some of our Arab states, rather than have a unity, which in this case, again, the colonial power, they don't want to see that. And this is one of the reasons why Israel was in the region. For your information, Israel was established in the 1948. And since the establishment, now we are talking about 75, 76 years, okay? There isn't one decade, 10 years, Israel wasn't in a major war in the region. 48, then 56 against Egypt in the Suez Canal problem, 76 when they occupied, 67 when they occupied us, 73 with Egypt and Syria, 82 in Lebanon when they occupied Lebanon, and then in 90s it was the Iraqi war. Then after that 2000, you can imagine many wars. One of them is with Lebanon 2006, and 2009 against Gaza. Then in the next decade, it was many wars against Gaza, 2012, 2014, then 2021, and now this one, 2024, 23, 24. There isn't one decade without a war or two wars, at least. Okay, a regional one, a big one. That's why they were created, to keep the area unstable always. And no one is daring to talk about anymore, about unity, we tried it, 1959, Abdel Nasser, he united Syria with Egypt, and that continued till 1962. Failed after 62. However, 62, before it failed, Iraq joined them, and that was a red alarm for the West. 3 Arab countries, and they call it United Arab Republic. 3 countries, Syria, Iraq, and Egypt, and 3 big countries. And that's why the project of America and Condoleezza Rice, the new Middle East, and that what even Netanyahu talked about in his speech in the United Nations just 3-4 weeks ago, speaking about the new Middle East. Iraq is going to be 4 countries, according to them, to cut it even more, smaller. Syria, 3 countries. Egypt, they are going to do it at least 2 countries, north and south. Part of Saudi Arabia will be joined to Jordan, and Jordan will be 2 countries. So it's even, to make smaller and smaller pieces in the Arab world. And this is the idea of Israel. This is what Netanyahu in the United Nations speech he was preaching for, and talking about a new Middle East, a new order in the Middle East. That's what he wanted. A total control for Israel over the whole Middle East. But those problematic people, Hamas and Palestinian resistance and Hezbollah and the Houthi in Yemen, and that's his problem now. He wants to shut up them all. The mic.
Thank you, Professor Saad. There is another question by Flavia Xavier Merlotti. Would you like to ask about the idea of talking Palestine as question? As in Palestinian question, others such as Dubois suggest that the very idea of naming it as question, as an unsolved continuum in time and history, is in fact a colonial strategy to sustain supremacy in the region. That's why we call it Palestinian question. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I do agree with her. I do agree. Yes, I think this is under named, and these names came usually from Western intellectuals who created the question, like the Jewish question. Now it's Palestinian question, but no, the situation is not like that. We are people under occupation, under colonialism, and we need to get rid of colonialism, not by half kind of solutions, and especially in that, and that's why the term Palestinian question. Solve the Palestinian question. Palestinian question is about, before 1967, it's about those refugees, because we are talking about 1948, 750,000, 750,000 Palestinians became refugees. Those are the ones who are officially registered, officially by the United Nations. So what's the problem with the Palestinians? They're a bunch of refugees. Give them some food and solve your problem. From here, it came the Palestinian question. What's the Palestinian question? It's the problem of refugees. No, we are people under colonialism, and we want our self-determination and independence, totally. And I don't know, especially now, I don't agree at all with the idea of 2 states. Why? Where is the right for these people to have a state on the expense of my land? So I'm against even the idea of 2-state solution. I'm going for 1-state solution, ending colonialism, and let's live together. I have no problem. But with no colonialism, with no Zionism, with no this mentality in Israel, I have no problem with you as people.
Yeah.
I have a problem with colonialism.
Thank you, Professor Saad. Another question, Professor, by Isadora Machado. She's making a question. There are Palestinians working for Israeli in occupied Palestine nowadays? Today?
Again, the question again, please.
There are Palestinians working for Israeli in occupied Palestine today?
Working for Israeli.
Yeah.
Working. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Yes. Because from 1967, when they occupied West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, they have annexed our economy to their economy. So we are in a situation of periphery and core for the economy, and they are the core and we are the periphery. So they are controlling totally our economy. Plus, they are controlling total. We are not an independent country. We are under occupation. So they are controlling also all our borders. So we can't export or import but through them. So economically speaking, we became under them. And they make sure that this country is not going to be a production or producer country. So we are only consumers. And such an economy definitely will have a surplus of workers who can't find jobs in Palestine. So they opened the market, Israeli market, for the Palestinian workers. Before the Intifada and Oslo Agreement, we have almost 250,000 Palestinians working in Israeli jobs inside Israel. And this is the best solution for the Israelis. Do you know why? For two reasons. The first reason that the wages are less for the Palestinian worker in comparison to the Israeli worker. And the second thing is, for instance, Germany have a big problem. They need workers and they bring them from Turkey. But what's the problem with people coming from Turkey? They will live in the country. If you are importing labor from outside, they will live in your country. And this is against the mentality in Israel of, pure Jewish state. So the best for them was the Palestinian workers, because they work in Israel in the morning. In the afternoon, they go to their home, to their villages. So they don't live there. They don't cause social problems. So yeah, we have lots. Now, after that, and after the Palestinian Authority, also the number of laborers increased. But latest numbers of Palestinian workers before the 7th of October, it was around 200,000 Palestinians working in Israel. Now, since the 7th of October, they closed all the markets. They stopped, having Palestinian workers. And now we are in a big problem now because we have overwhelming number of workers who don't have jobs at all. And the unemployment rate is really, really very high. So yeah, this is a situation. But before that, yeah, they used to work inside Israel, and they have a much better salaries than the one that they will have locally. So they, encouraged to go there. And especially the highest number of the unemployed, you can imagine, the university graduates. University graduates, they can't find jobs at all in the West Bank. We graduated every year around 43 to 45,000 young men with a bachelor degree. Okay, the market absorbs every year around 3 to 5,000 only. So we are talking about more than 35,000 every year graduated, and they are not employed. And this is the policy of Israel controlling our economy. So they will try to go either outside, which is a silent immigration and ethnically cleansing of Palestine, or they will accept to work as a labor, a worker in Israel.
Thank you, Professor. There is another question, Professor. There is a lot of questions that the students made. So Gabriel Simeren made the question: Did the Syrian social nationalists, الحزب السوري القومي الاجتماعي, ever have a large influence in Palestine?
No, at all. And it has no influence even in their own country. It's a very, very small party. we have a few nationalist parties still exist and around, especially in Syria and in Lebanon, to reunite what was known as Bilad al-Sham, which is Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine as a one country, which we used to be one country before at least 1917, 1918. But they have not that much influence. However, in Syria, still the Ba'ath Party, who's the ruling party and the biggest party, and the Ba'ath Party is also a nationalist party. And he's claiming the same thing, to unite Arabs again, and they are still in power, but now with different, approaches than, during the 60s and 70s when the idea of Arab nationalism was still strong. But now nobody is talking about Arab nationalism and Arab, pan-Arabism and Arab state. However, these other parties are there, and we have lots of parties in the Arab world, but not necessarily that they have such an influence. Now, in Palestine, we have enough of parties, for God's sake. We have more than 14, okay? And we are still under occupation. Whether it's the Islamic political parties, such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad, and we have the Marxists and communists, like the Popular Front and the Democratic Front and the Communist Party. And then we have also lots of other smaller parties, which sometimes, they split it from bigger parties. So we have 14 altogether, all of them under the umbrella of the PLO, what we call it the PLO. So the PLO is not a party by itself. It's an umbrella for all our Palestinian parties. Hamas and Islamic Jihad are not in the PLO, and this is now what we are trying to do, to bring them in, to have all Palestinian parties under one foot, and to reform the PLO to have more political, I'm talking more politics than academics, okay? Because let me tell you something. You are today in front of a classical Palestinian terrorist, according to Israel. I served 8 years in the Israeli prisons because I was involved in politics. 8 years, okay? First time I was arrested, I was 15 years old. So, and ever since I'm involved in politics. So sometimes I speak as an academic, sometimes I'm speaking as a politician, okay? So this is sometimes the benefit of talking about Palestine by someone like me, to have both sides.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, welcome.
Professor, this is another question. What are your personal perspectives on the hope of a free Palestine in the medium or long term?
Well, now we are in this middle of the crisis, and I hope it will end for our kind of sake, to end. When we are talking about ending Israel, we are not talking about, like eliminating or killing or, no, for this regime to collapse, exactly as it happened in South Africa, when the boycott all around the world for the apartheid regime in Pretoria, they couldn't handle it anymore. And for your information, do you know Pretoria regime, what they did before the collapse of the apartheid regime in South Africa? They went into 4 wars in order to gain again their, power, as Israel trying now to do. And this is, I believe, an indication of the collapse. I hope that Israel will collapse as a regime, not people, something else. And we will end this colonial episode. I think that in the future, yes, definitely one state. And when we talk about one state, I mean that, liberation of all Palestine from the river to the sea, as we usually say, in order to create a regime. Now, regardless of the method, maybe like the example of South Africa, a democratic, secular state for all its citizens, or maybe we'll adopt, let's say, the Belgium way. You have multinational country, but with an agreement, with one parliament, with one government. So it depends. These are the details. Let us finish first the first step, which is in such case, to end this colonial power, and then after that we will see how we are going to deal with it. But our aim, yes, absolutely. That's why I said from the very beginning, there isn't anything called two-state solution, which everyone is talking about. It became two-state illusion. Because even if they give our state, will continue to be under their control, and they will not allow us to do anything. Plus, there isn't any this mentality, right-wing mentality and fascist mentality in Israel today. There isn't any Israeli leader is going to say East Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine. No way. No way any leader in Israel will say we will take off all the settlements and settlers back. We're talking about almost 1 million or a little bit less than 1 million. This is only in the West Bank and in Jerusalem. Almost 1 million, which is legally, this is absolutely, against international law. Because Geneva Convention, very clear. The occupying country can't move its own citizens to the occupied territories. And this is in Geneva Convention. So all these settlements are illegal from the international point of view. Who's going to take 1 million settlers back to Israel? Definitely not. They will kill him. They will, no, two-state solution, now it's behind us. It is behind us. So let's go for one state.
Okay, Professor. Another question by Macarena Maria Sfeir. Even if we would believe myths that they are returning to their land, what is the connection between Ashkenazi Jews and the historical land of Palestine? Is there any?
Personally speaking, no, I don't think that there is, because we are not talking those Jews of today. They are not the original Jews who used to be in Palestine 3,000 years ago when they passed through in Palestine. Look, for your information, Palestine was under more than 13 countries who occupied Palestine in the history. All of them gone, and we remained. Right now, the Jewish Ashkenazi, we are referring here to Ashkenazi for those Jews who came originally from Europe, and especially Western Europe, because Israel being, Zionism being a racist, so they will be also racist against themselves. So we're talking, this is the creme de la creme of the society in Israel, is the Ashkenazi, who are the Jewish who came from Western European countries. Then you have the second grade, those who came from Eastern European. There is a difference between one coming from Germany and another one who's coming from Romania. So this is second class. Then we are talking about those who are coming from Arab countries, such as Morocco, Iraq, and so on. So then those who are coming from third world countries, or not third world countries, even other countries around the world, like from America and here and there. Then you have those who are coming from third world countries. And then in the last of this equation is the Flasha, who's the Ethiopian. And they are discriminating against them. They are Jews, and they encourage them to come to Israel, and they are, against them. Yemeni Jews, who came from Yemen. There was a big scandal about, taking their children and giving them to other families to raise them in a different way. The Flasha one was a big scandal about, giving women some kind of medicine, injections, to prevent them of carrying babies, because they don't want black Jews. I'm talking African black Jews. So yes, the Ashkenazi are the top of the society. These are, but what kind of relation in Palestine? This coming from Germany, some coming from Britain, France, those Western countries. What kind of connection? 3,000 years ago, or the other thing, which is that God promised us this land. Apparently, that God was working as a state agent at that time, giving land to this and giving land to that. What's going on here? So no, it's a project, a colonial project, regardless of any claims. I will quote one of our poets called Samih al-Qasim. He said, Ham or Sam or Yafat does not concern me. The past, 3,000 years ago, does not concern me. What concerns me that I lost the moment of having my coffee on my balcony in my home. This is a colonial project, regardless of the acclaim. 3,000 years I passed through. Come on, for God's sake. You are pushing people out and replacing them. That's the reality. Whether you are Shiknazi, you are Sephardim, which is the eastern part of the Jews, and who you are, whoever you are. You have no right to take people out of their land and to settle yourself instead, to kick them out, and they became refugees. Till today, they are living in 58 refugee camps all around the region, in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, in the West Bank, and in Gaza. 58 refugee camps, which is under the UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency of the United Nations, which Israel considers it as a terrorist organization, an international organization by the United Nations, and Israel is calling it terrorist organization because it's taking care of the Palestinian refugees. Till, according to the mandate, till they return back to their homes, according to the resolution 194 of the United Nations. But Israel is not going to let Palestinians come out. So don't tell me about 3,000 years ago. I will tell you something. In the claim of the Jewish biblical story that they have their state in Palestine for 72 years, okay, and then they left. Well, for God's sake, Roman stayed in Palestine for 400 years. So I think the Romans have more rights to come and claim Palestine than Jews. They've been ruling Palestine for 400 years, not for 70 years. So the Roman should come and claim Palestine because they've been here. So this is not a claim when we are talking about history or talking about, part of Jews and what kind of relation. This is a colonial relation, period. They can cover it with religion, they can cover it with whatever beautiful cultural ideas, but that won't change the reality that it is a colonialist project.
Okay, there is another question. What do you think is the political and academic role of the Arab diaspora, especially in Latin America, in the struggle for freedom in the Palestine?
Yeah, I think that this is, they have to do something about it, not necessarily when we say that to, resist this occupation and resist this colonial project means that everyone had to hold, even in Palestine, to hold a weapon. This is absolutely absurd. No, you have a role, not only by social media, other ways, to expose what's going on in Palestine. This is one thing, and to promote the idea of a boycott of this regime in the country, to push the governments, wherever you are, to take a decision about the relationship with Israel, to cut the relationship with Israel. If we are talking about this country being like what happened with South Africa, when they start everyone boycotting them, they will lose a lot of the investments. They will lose a lot of markets that they are selling in, and in such case, the capital in Israel will flee out. They will use their other passports to go back. Okay, and in such case, this country will collapse. So what we have to do to promote the idea of boycott, and I would say to work like what the BDS movement is talking about, the boycott, divest, and sanctions, and to push the governments to do so. In South Africa, it started as a grassroots also organizations, grassroots-oriented organizations. People, organization groups, they started to boycott, and the thing started to escalate till it reached that the countries is taking a kind of decision to boycott South Africa. I hope that we should have the same or do the same. And especially now, we have two factors to help us. The first factor, that the whole world is doing demonstrations against what was going on in Palestine. In every single and in every capital around the world, there is demonstration in support of Palestine and to, stop arming Israel and forcing her to stop the war. So this will give us the ethical, if you like, factor. And the other factor is the legal factor, where we have the ICC and ICJ, the International Court for Justice and the International Court of Criminal Court. Both of them are talking about, decisions against Israel and bringing Israeli leaders to be dealt with as criminals. And this will give us the factor of the legal aspect. So if we have the ethical and the legal aspect, what are we waiting for to take our decision to stop dealing with this country that the whole world is talking about it, that it is, a menace country, and it's a violent and committing genocide against and breaking all the laws, breaking all the laws in human rights, whether in even international law.
Professor, we have 2 questions and 10 minutes to finish. So
Okay.
we will do the question. The following question is by Isadora Tarsila. What do you think that is more important for the collapse of Zionism, the support in the West, or the revolt in the Arab countries against the regime that negotiates with Israel?
Yeah, well, if we understand what the Israeli want, I was talking about this new project in the Middle East, which is called the New Middle East. Israel is what they wanted. They want to normalize relationship with some Arab countries, and they are willing to do so, especially now Saudi Arabia, in order to create a kind of an alliance in the region led by Israel, and Israel is on top as a superior, in case to confront the influence of Iran, as they say usually. Okay, so this is the idea. Well, in reality, it's the control of Israel of all the region, and that will fulfill their greed, if you like, for controlling their region, because they are talking about Israel original borders is between Euphrates and Nile, like having more than half of Iraq, all of Syria, and half of Egypt, till the Nile. It's crazy. There will never been a state like that before in history. It's just, the exaggeration of the biblical story. So that's what they wanted. Now, how they are going to achieve that? They want to control over the area. Arab countries, now we are like, became very clear which Arab countries are we talking about. Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon, they are definitely standing with the Palestinians, with their resistance, okay? If we are talking about Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and then we go to Emirates and so other Arab countries, they are allying with Israel and the United States, and they are materializing the project of the United States. For God's sake, when there is a boycott against the Palestinians, when the Palestinians were hungry in Gaza, and the Yemeni blocked the Red Sea, the Arab countries provided Israel with all the products they wanted, especially the food. And you know that your people, the Palestinians, are starving in Gaza and they have no food, and Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Emirates passing through the food to Israel in order Israel want to, be affected by this embargo imposed by the Yemenis. So which Arab countries? We have to understand that now the area is between right and wrong, between colonialism and between liberation and freedom. That's how we are seeing it. So yeah, definitely we are with freedom, and everyone should be with freedom, not with colonialism and controlling of Israel for the whole area.
Okay, Professor, the last question by Julia Sabino Rodriguez Cunha. Read the news that Hamas and Fatah signed unity deal in Beijing, in China. But I would like to know how it is working in practice in occupied Palestine territories.
Yeah, okay, not yet. This is unfortunately because in Fatah, and especially the Palestinian Authority, are still connected with the American project. That's our problem. They are still thinking prior the 7th of October. They didn't realize that the 7th of October had created lots of changes. And for your information, 7th of October is a milestone in the whole history of Palestine and maybe the region as a whole. It's not just an event that happened in the 7th of October. No, it inflicted changes in the Palestinian if you like, communities, Palestinian world, Palestinian country, because we don't have a country, politics, if you like. Now people, according to all the polls, showing that the overwhelming majority with Palestinian people are behind the resistance, even if it's armed resistance. And this is the only way to deal with this colonial project. And here, excuse me, let me bring the call of Frantz Fanon when he said that colonialism is an act of violence. And to answer colonialism, you have to use violence. Okay, Palestinians now became understanding that. So the approach of, peaceful way, and let's talk to the Israelis. We can't talk to the Israeli. It's not a matter of negotiating. Negotiating over what? Negotiating over our rights? It's not there. So this is make a huge change in the internal Palestinian politics. If the elections is going now, Mahmoud Abbas and his party won't get 1%, though they are now ruling in the West Bank. And definitely the power of resistance will take all the votes. So it makes the changes in the Palestinian society. The second thing, it makes changes in the Israeli society. Israeli society now became fragmented. And this is the first time ever in the history of Israel, which is a short one, 76 years, that they go to a war and not the whole population behind them. Usually that's what happened in any war, always. And the opposition and the people and everyone behind the government. In this time, there are fragmentation, the opposition on one side, the people on one side, the government on one side, and they are having lots of problems internally. The problem of Haredim, the religious people who are refusing to go to army, and now the government, because they have agreements with some religious party, they don't want to push them, but the other party is saying no, they should go. The problem that Netanyahu created also with the judicial system in Israel, that he want to change the judicial system in Israel to make, less important of the judicial system in supposedly a democracy. That created another problem. Now the drafting to army, especially for the reserve, this is also creating another problem. The whole war is creating a big problem. So it's now the Israeli society is very, very much fragmented. Now, regionally, for the very first time, we have such what we call it now the axle of resistance: Hezbollah, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, with Palestine. And this is sending a very, very strong message that all the time Israel considered the Palestinian issue is an internal issue. No one interferes. Now we have Hezbollah, and we have the Yemenis, and we have the Iraqis, and we have the Syrian, all in favor of the Palestinian and to support the Palestinians. So that created a new change also in the region. And then internationally, I think Israel now became exposed more than any once before. Exposed in front of everyone that they are violent, they are against human rights, they are against, killing the children, they are doing this genocide, and they should pay for that somehow, okay? The term which was used after the Second World, never again, referring to Nazis and the Jews regarding the Holocaust. I will remind the whole world with this statement, never again. Is it applying only to the Jews or applied to every race in this humanity? If it is so it's a racist statement if it's only for the Jews. If it's for the humanity, why it does not apply to us? Never again.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Saad, with this last sentences, never again. So we will rapidly pass the word to Professor Giorgio Romano. Please, Professor Giorgio.
Yeah, no, I just want to thank you very much. This is powerful and precise lecture. It's very important for all who are attending and came very clear in your lecture. Colonial and imperialist origins of this conflict. We must resist this idea that this all started just 1 year ago, and many want us to believe. If the Israeli army says that we should treat the Palestinians as not as humans because of what happened in the 1 year ago, and your lecture made it very clear the dehumanization of the Palestinian people was part and parcel of the project from the beginning.
Yes.
I think this was a wonderful speech, and you saw a lot of questions, which means a lot of participations.
I was so happy.
Yeah. Okay. So that's from my part. Mohammed, there's just next about the next lecture.
To say that the next lecture is the next Thursday, 15 October, History of Palestine from the Arab Revolt till the Intifada, History of Palestine Part 2 by Salim Tamari. So see you next Thursday, next week. Thank you very much.
You got a great person. You got a great person, Dr. Salim Tamari.
Okay, like you,
Our professor.
Professor said. Thank you very much. Thank you very
You
much.
are welcome. Thank you. Thank you
everybody.
Thank you for me, and I was really, really happy with even the questions and everything. And
Barakallahu feek. Barakallahu feek, Ustad Saad. Barakallahu feek. Thank you, Ragda, again.
Thank you so
Professor
much.
Giorgio. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye-bye.